For thousands of years, civilizations have risen, expanded, conquered, and collapsed, shaping the world through cycles of power and decline. Empires vanished into dust while new ones rose in their place, each believing it was destined to last forever. Kings who once commanded armies now survive only as names carved into fading stone. Borders shifted repeatedly, rewritten by wars, treaties, and ambition. Technologies evolved from primitive tools to sophisticated machines and finally into digital systems, controlling global networks. Yet beneath all these visible changes lies a quieter force shaping societies in ways most people never recognize. This force is older than coins, older than writing, older than organized religion. It influenced how early kingdoms governed their people and controlled their economies. It determined which empires expanded and which quietly rotted from within. And the strange truth is that this force has never disappeared. It still governs modern economies with the same silent power it held thousands of years ago. It still influences who becomes wealthy, who stays poor, and which nations dominate the global stage. It still shapes political decisions, economic structures, and the daily lives of billions. This force is an ancient financial trick, simple, powerful, and almost universally misunderstood. Entire nations rely on it without fully understanding how it works or why it exists. Once you uncover it, you begin to see that modern economics is not a radical innovation, but a polished continuation of ancient methods. The systems we use today have new names, new tools, and new technologies, but their DNA is thousands of years old. To understand the present, we must journey into the distant past where the trick began. The story takes us not to Wall Street or London, but to temples of mud brick and markets of dusty stone. It begins before banking, before currency, before the idea of nations. In this world, money was not metal or paper, it was something far more abstract. The ancient world ran on one essential truth. The most valuable thing wasn't gold, it was the promise of gold. Early civilizations in Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria quickly realized how risky it was to transport precious metals across dangerous lands. Merchants traveling long distances faced bandits, harsh climates, and unpredictable terrain. Heavy bags of gold or silver slowed travel and invited attack. Yet trade was essential for survival, growth, and prosperity. So people created a simple solution. Instead of moving metal, they documented obligation. They wrote "I owe us" promises etched into clay tablets. These tablets recorded who owed what, and when repayment was due. At first, they were merely practical tools for record keeping. But soon, something extraordinary happened that no one expected. The tablets themselves began circulating as value. A clay tablet representing 10 measures of grain could be traded just like grain itself. A tablet recording debt owed to a temple could be handed to another merchant. The promise of value became as good as the value. In essence, the world's first credit system had emerged. And credit, not coins, became the foundation of early economies. This realization changed everything about how societies functioned. People trusted the promises because the temples backing them held authority and stability. Temples soon figured out an even more powerful truth. If people trusted their promises, they could issue more promises than the actual goods they stored. As long as not everyone demanded repayment simultaneously, the system worked. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking thousands of years before the modern term existed. Temples became the world's first financial institutions, lending, storing, and issuing credit. Their power grew not from wealth they physically held, but from promises they created. The trick worked beautifully during prosperity and stability. But like all systems built on promises, it contained a fatal weakness. When too many promises were issued, trust faltered. And when trust faltered, panic destroyed the system rapidly. People rushed to redeem their clay tablets, demanding grain or silver the temples did not have. Financial collapse followed, sometimes forcing rulers to erase debts entirely to avoid rebellion. These early debt cancellations were the world's first economic resets, primitive but necessary. This cycle repeated endlessly throughout ancient Mesopotamia. Credit brought prosperity when used responsibly, but excessive credit created instability and collapse. The same pattern would later appear in ancient Greece, Rome, and even China. Every society that discovered credit also eventually suffered from its misuse. Yet, despite the risks, the trick never disappeared. Credit was simply too powerful to abandon. Rome expanded the trick further, creating complex banking systems with deposits, loans, and interest rates. Wealthy Romans borrowed heavily to fund estates, business ventures, and political ambitions. Trade flourished because credit allowed transactions across vast distances without moving metal. But crises emerged when too many loans turned bad or when confidence vanished. Rome tried repeatedly to stabilize its credit system, but eventually even it succumbed to internal financial decay. After Rome fell, Europe temporarily lost the art of large-scale credit creation. But in the Middle Ages, goldsmiths unknowingly revived it. People stored gold with goldsmiths for safekeeping and received paper receipts in return. The receipts became money themselves. Goldsmiths realized they could issue more receipts than gold they held. This rediscovered trick allowed wealth to multiply rapidly, even without physical gold. Lending expanded. Businesses grew. But whenever a goldsmith overextended, bank runs exposed the illusion. This led to renewed cycles of booming prosperity followed by sudden collapse. Yet again, the trick survived and evolved. The Renaissance brought powerful banking families like the Medici to dominate Europe. They extended credit across continents, funding wars, exploration, and empires. Monarchs depended on them for financing. Credit had become more than economic power, it became political power. By the 1600s, nations themselves adopted the trick. The Bank of England was founded not to store gold, but to create money backed by government debt. Debt became the foundation of national currency. The more governments borrowed, the more money entered circulation. Credit funding replaced taxation as the core of state finance. Empires expanded because they could borrow endlessly to fund wars and infrastructure. The ancient mechanism had now scaled to the national level. Nations themselves had become engines of credit creation. But even this powerful system faced limits imposed by the gold standard. Currencies could only expand as far as gold reserves allowed. Eventually, governments saw this limit as an obstacle. Wars, industrialization, and economic growth demanded far more credit than gold permitted. The breaking point arrived in 1971. President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold, severing the final tie between currency and metal. Money became fully abstract pure debt backed by faith alone. This unleashed the most powerful version of the trick in human history. Now money could be created with a keystroke. Credit could expand infinitely as long as people believed in the system. Global debt exploded past $300 trillion as governments, corporations, and households borrowed endlessly. And the world entered the most leveraged era it has ever known. The danger now lies not in the amount of debt, but in the speed at which it multiplies. Recessions are countered with more credit creation. Crises are softened by printing money. Entire economies depend on expanding promises faster than reality can support. Modern systems mirror ancient collapses, only at a global scale. Ancient Babylon erased debts to prevent civil unrest. Today, nations restructure trillions in loans for the same reason. Medieval bank runs happened because promises exceeded reserves. Today's financial panics happen for identical reasons. The Great Depression occurred when confidence vanished overnight. The 2008 crash happened because credit expanded too fast for the real economy to support. Each of these crises followed the same ancient pattern. Too many promises, not enough real value. a sudden loss of belief, and rapid collapse. The modern world repeats the same mistakes, except numbers are larger and consequences more global. Endless credit creation now fuels everything from national budgets to corporate growth. Consumers rely on credit for housing, education, and daily survival. Governments rely on credit to fund programs, wars, and infrastructure. When nations face recession, they borrow. When corporations face pressure, they borrow. When households struggle, they borrow. Every solution leads to more debt. Every crisis is solved with more credit. The system is trapped in a loop that grows more fragile each year. This is the final evolution of the ancient trick. The world is now fully dependent on promises that must expand forever. But history is clear. No system of infinite promises can endure indefinitely. The moment belief cracks, collapse follows. This does not mean collapse is imminent. It means the system must be understood clearly to avoid repeating history blindly. The first major takeaway is that modern economies are built on credit, not money. Digital currencies, bank balances, and government bonds are all forms of promises. The second takeaway is that true financial power lies not in wealth itself, but in the ability to create promises. Those who control credit control economies. This was true for ancient temples, medieval goldsmiths, Renaissance bankers, and modern central banks. And the third takeaway is that every credit-based system eventually reaches the edge of belief. Once too many promises circulate, reality struggles to support them. History shows that belief is the final anchor of every monetary system. The warning for our era is simple. We are living in the largest credit system ever created. Its size gives it unprecedented power, but also unprecedented fragility. A loss of confidence anywhere can trigger waves across the entire planet. The consequences of failure today would be far greater than ancient collapses. Understanding the system is the first step toward navigating its future. Awareness is protection. Knowledge is stability. Recognizing patterns is the key to anticipating change. This ancient trick governs everything around us, silently shaping economies and destinies. And it will continue to do so until the day belief finally breaks. If you want to understand the next chapter of global finance, the forces shaping your economy, and the historical cycles repeating in real time, this journey must continue. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that our financial world is built not on wealth, but on promises. And those promises are only as strong as the faith we place in them. The ancient trick didn't survive for thousands of years because it was perfect. It survived because humanity depends on belief to function. Every currency, every banknote, every digital dollar rests on this belief. When belief is strong, the system expands smoothly. When belief weakens, instability grows. It's a cycle as old as civilization itself, and it is still unfolding today. The final message is not one of fear, but of awareness. Understanding the mechanism gives you power. Recognizing the patterns gives you foresight. Seeing the ancient trick clearly allows you to understand what others cannot. And in a world governed by invisible forces, awareness is your greatest advantage. If this exploration opened your eyes, there is much more ahead. The story of global finance is vast, interconnected, and deeply historical. The past is not separate from the present, it is the blueprint. Understanding it prepares you for the future. And that future is arriving faster than most realize. So if you want to follow this journey, make sure you stay connected. There are more hidden mechanisms, more ancient blueprints, and more financial structures that shape your world. The deeper you go, the more you see. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. This is the foundation of global economics. This is the root of financial power. This is the ancient trick that still governs modern systems. And understanding it changes everything.